This is Land of Havilah, John 4a. At the last mention of Jesus, he was staying somewhere in Judea baptizing, and John was nearby also baptizing. Verse 1. Therefore, when the Lord knew that the Pharisees had heard that Jesus was making and baptizing more disciples than John, although Jesus himself didn't baptize but his disciples, he left Judea and departed into Galilee. Comment: Jesus was drawing large crowds, quote, making and baptizing more disciples than John, end quote. But he knew the Pharisees were keeping tabs on the situation with a jealous eye. As the writer John said in chapter 1, verse 11, they didn't receive him. Large crowds of the public did, but not the leadership. Jesus didn't want to push the issue with the Pharisees yet, so he left for Galilee. Verse 4. He needed to pass through Samaria, so he came to a city of Samaria called Sychar, near the parcel of ground that Jacob gave to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there. Jesus, therefore, being tired from his journey, sat down by the well. It was about the 6th hour. Comment: going back to Jacob 1900 years before in Genesis, he served his uncle Laban in Haran for 20 years. He acquired wives there, had children, became rich with an abundance of livestock animals. Then Jacob returned to Canaan. He didn't own any land in Canaan, so he bought some and dug a well, which is the same land and the same well to which Jesus has now come. Jacob had 11 sons when he lived there. He and his family were the house of Israel, the entire house of Israel. So this was the well of water that sustained all Israel. So the piece of land with the well is central to the origins and spiritual journey of the nation of Israel. To add to the spiritual history, after the Israelites returned from Egypt, they buried Joseph's bones on that land, Joshua 24:32. Back in Egypt, Joseph had been the source of bread for the world, and Jesus is the source of spiritual bread and living water for the world. Let's not think for a moment that these convergences were accidental, because God's the master of events. Jesus is at the well that sustained all Israel for a reason. Sitting on that well or next to that well, which was a vital source of water for all Israel, he's going to talk about another type of water that all Israel needs, all the world. Jesus is alone, sitting by the well. The disciples went to town for food. It's about noon, and verse 7. A woman of Samaria came to draw water. Jesus said to her, "Give me a drink," for his disciples had gone away to the city to buy food. The Samaritan woman therefore said to him, "How is it that you, being a Jew, ask for a drink from me, a Samaritan woman? For Jews have no dealings with Samaritans." Jesus answered her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is who says to you, 'Give me a drink,' you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." Comment: Jesus said he could give her living water. She doesn't know what he's talking about. Verse 11. The woman said to him, "Sir, you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. So where do you get that living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us the well and drank of it himself, as did his children and his livestock?" Comment: the Samaritan woman doesn't know at this point what Jesus is talking about. He might actually have some type of attractive offer, or he could be talking harmless nonsense. He might even be trying to flirt. She's very experienced with men, as we find out later. So she played along. She said, "This water was good enough for the great Jacob, so why shouldn't it be good enough for me? Are you saying you have water better than Jacob's water? You must think you're greater than Jacob." That's a lot of bragging for someone who doesn't even have a bucket to draw with. Verse 13. Jesus answered her, "Everyone who drinks of this water will thirst again, but whoever drinks of the water that I will give him will never thirst again, but the water that I will give him will become in him a well of water springing up to eternal life." The woman said to him, "Sir, give me this water so that I don't get thirsty, neither come all the way here to draw." Comment: she still doesn't know what to say, so she says, "I'll take some of that magic water. I'm tired of drawing water anyway." Verse 16. Jesus said to her, "Go call your husband and come here." The woman answered, "I have no husband." Jesus said to her, "You said well, 'I have no husband,' for you have had 5 husbands, and he whom you now have is not your husband. You have said truly. Comment, that was the bomb that blew her mind. She didn't know what to think about Jesus until now, but when he told her about her history with men, she said the following, verse 19. The woman said to him, Sir, I perceive that you are a prophet. Comment, she might have been the only one on earth that knew she had 5 husbands and that she's now living with a man out of wedlock. So how does Jesus know her history? She realizes she's speaking to a prophet. She notices Jesus was a Jew because she said, verse 20, Our fathers worshipped in this mountain, and you Jews say that in Jerusalem is the place where people ought to worship. Comment, that indeed is the law of Moses. Tithes, offerings, and sacrifices to God should be made at the temple in Jerusalem, and all males should come there at least 3 times per year. Exodus 20:24, 23:17, Deuteronomy 12:5-28, and 1 Kings 9:3. But the woman says her Samaritan ancestors worshipped on one of the local mountains, not in Jerusalem. This goes back to a 1,000-year-old rift between God and the Samaritans and between the Jews and Samaritans to the time of King Jeroboam of Samaria. Jeroboam ruled Samaria and ruined Samaria. He caused a rift with God because he didn't accept the law of Moses. He told his Samaritan subjects that they shouldn't go to Jerusalem for worship, but rather that they should worship golden calves in Samaria, 1 Kings 12:27-28. The woman realized Jesus was a Jew, so she's bringing up the historical dispute between her people and his people. Jesus' people, the Jews, have been saying that the Samaritans are worshiping fruitlessly if they're not coming to Jerusalem and subjecting themselves to the priestly authorities there. Of course, she's talking about the same authorities that are at this moment rejecting Jesus. Verse 21. Jesus said to her, Woman, believe me, the hour comes when neither in this mountain nor in Jerusalem will you worship the Father. You worship that which you don't know. We worship that which we know, for salvation is from the Jews. But the hour comes, and now is, when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth, for the Father seeks such to be his worshipers. Comment, Jesus knows that within 3 years he'll be crucified and the new covenant will come into effect. The Mosaic law, which requires worship in the temple at Jerusalem, will be a thing of the past. Verse 24. God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and truth. Comment, God's not interested in the place of worship, but in our inner condition of worship, that we worship truly and sincerely, not based on social expectations. Verse 25. The woman said to him, I know that Messiah comes, he who is called Christ. When he has come, he will declare to us all things. Jesus said to her, I am he, the one who speaks to you. Comment, she already knows that Jesus is a prophet, but she doesn't know the half of it. Prophets only get snippets from God, Numbers 12:8. Therefore, she doesn't expect that Jesus can declare all things, that he knows all the answers. But he does know all the answers. His disciples would come to find out that Jesus does know all things. Quote, Now we know that you know all things, John 16:30. She's waiting on Messiah to come and declare all things. Then Jesus told her flatly, quote, I am he, the one who speaks to you. It was a very explicit admission that he was the Messiah, the Christ. He wouldn't be able to make that admission peaceably in Judea. John the Baptist wasn't free in Judea either to be explicit about Jesus, that he was the Christ. But in Samaria, which the Jews said was a spiritual wasteland, there wasn't so much barrier to speaking the truth. We'll see what the woman does with this information in John 4b at landofhavilah.net, John 4b.